What is up, players? It's Warboss Tay back up in this mug. Welcome to another video where we're going to be breaking down this Prince Duvala model, and we're focusing specifically on the blood red armor. This red armor can be used for a number of different armies and miniatures from different game systems, such as the Blood Angels, the Word Bearers in Warhammer 40k, the Blood Knights or the Blood Dragons from Age of Sigmar, Warhammer Fantasy. So the first thing I did was I sprayed my Gray Seer primer onto this miniature and let that dry so it creates this nice bright white undercoat, and then I went at it with Mephiston red. And you'll notice that I sped up the video a little bit because the base coat really is just to lay down an even coat. It doesn't need to be played at regular speed. If you want to check out the entire video of Prince Duvala at regular speed, watch every single paint stroke in real time, paint along with me, then that video is coming out soon. So check that out. Not only do I paint the red armor, but I go over the skin, which I did in a previous video, the hair, the weapons, the gold trim. It all comes together into this beautiful finished model that looks like a very savage but also noble vampire, and it looks great if you haven't seen the pictures already. So again, you're trying to paint only with the tip of your brush. When you load up your paint, make sure that you're using a wet palette or some other way to thin the paint down, either with water or some kind of paint acrylic medium, like Lamian medium, so that your paint doesn't come out too thick. Now, Mephiston red is not that bad straight out of the bottle. It's no Deneb stone from the old range. You know, it's not thick. It's not going to create a lot of lumps and texture if you don't thin it down too much, but you don't want to paint straight out of the bottle. With everything, you really want to paint off of a wet palette. All right, now we're going to let that dry, move on to some other things. The next step for painting the red armor is taking this Agrax Earth Shade, shaking that bad boy up, and slathering it all over the red armor. You might have some other areas of your miniature that you're using Agrax Earthshade for. If you are, then this is the time to apply all of your Agrax Earthshade, because while it is still movable and workable, you can use your brush to move the puddles, thin them down. You're really looking to spread out your Agrax Earthshade so it doesn't pool in any area. Puddles are not your friend when it comes to these applying these washes onto your miniatures. Now I'm going with an all over wash rather than a focused and like a more directly into the creases and crevices wash, because Agrax Earthshade, once it's dry on bright red armor, it's going to create some very nice texture, some very nice shadows and depth that you can build up with your highlight colors. So basically get it all over everything, and let your miniature tell you and dictate where those puddles are so that you can easily pick them off with the tip of your brush. You don't want to overload your brush. You just want to have enough that you're working comfortably and can spread out that wash and that shade. So because I'm using this gold that's going to end up being a dark and dirty gold, that's why that Agrax Earthshade is going right onto there. So next I'm also adding some Nuln Oil, and I believe this is only really for the head and the hand, the weapon, yeah, most of the other bits. So the reason that I'm including it in this video is because you can use that Nuln Oil as a shadow line highlight, so that you can paint them in between the panels to create a deeper shadow than you would with Agrax Earthshade. Remember, Agrax Earthshade is brown, so when you do a Nuln Oil shade application over it, it's going to create deeper shadows because Nuln Oil is a black colored shade. After you let it dry, at least for overnight, we're going to go straight to Wazdaka Red. I didn't go back to Mephiston Red. You can do that. I usually repaint the base colors, so in this case Mephiston Red, but I really wanted to make these highlights more severe, make them pop more, and that's why I went straight to Wazdaka Red. And remember, you have to let your shades dry. If your shades are not completely dry, if they're still a little bit shiny, and you pick them up with the tip of your brush and you move them, it's going to create this horrible coffee ring stain. That's what I like to call it. Like when you leave your coffee cup on the table, it's got some coffee on it, on the bottom of it, and then you lift it up and there's that ugly ring on your table. That's what it's going to leave if you move around your shade, this ugly ring of dried up shade color, while the center of it has been pulled off by the tip of your paintbrush. So let it dry, be patient. I'm sure you have other miniatures to paint. I'm sure you've got other things you can do with your time than wait for those shades to dry completely. But yeah, at least 8 hours, possibly even more. All right, now as you're watching me apply in real time this Waz Daka Red, you'll see that I've got the paint mostly on the tip of my brush, and I've wiped away most of that paint so that I'm really able to focus where those strokes are. And instead of doing one big splotch of paint, just slapping it on, I'm trying to do this approach where I'm doing a bunch of different smaller strokes that create a feathered effect when you look at your miniature. You want that Agrax Earthshade known oil in those lines where the red armor meets the gold, where the plates overlap each other. But you do want to have a nice looking texture, which I'm achieving through the feathering effect on your miniature. Now, what I love about the Crimson Court is that the 4 vampire models included in this box are all completely different. Prince Duval is in this beautiful red spiky armor. You've got Big Boy with, I think it's a hammer or an axe or a sword, like a giant two-handed weapon. And he's a bald vampire. He's bulked out. He looks like a tank. He looks like Dave Bautista if he was a vampire. And then you've got the lady with the big hair, kind of like a Bride of Frankenstein look, wearing her lady spiky armor. And then you've got the more bestial looking guy that's hunched over with the bat wings and the crazy hair, and he just looks like he's blasted out of his mind. So each of them has a different look. They're all monopose, so you can't choose how to equip your miniature or how to pose them. And I really, really like how each one of them looks like a different aspect of the vampire mystique. So now I'm doing Evil Sunz Scarlet while I wax lyrical. I've got my paintbrush again, really focusing on the edges now. So we're just painting in the supremely fine edges of each armor plate, anywhere where the light would catch and kind of come to a focus. So that's what you're going to be seeing me doing with this Evil Sunz Scarlet. I'm not going to be working on the middles of these plates. I'm really making lines. I'm drawing little T's, upside down T's for those shoulder plates. I'm focusing on the edges of the armor and the lines where they naturally come to a point. And yeah, what was I saying? The aesthetic of each of the 4 vampires makes painting them a joy. It's kind of like when I bought that Dread Fleet box. Each ship was completely different, and then you had terrain, and you had little dirigibles, and all these different things to paint up. Everything looked completely different. Every one of those ships was completely different from the next one, representing all of the different factions that had naval elements to them. It was just a joy to paint, and that is what these models are too. You're not looking at a big army or a big force of identical looking miniatures. Even the Blood Knights or the Blood Dragons for the Soulblight Gravelords are all dressed kind of identically in the same red armor. Now, if all 4 of these vampire miniatures looked like Prince Duval here, but were just posed separately, then I say, well, what's the point in that? Just go buy a box of Stormcast Eternals and see a bunch of identically armored miniatures all in different poses. But like I said, each one of these vampires pose differently. They all exude different aspects of the vampire aesthetic. Prince Duval here is that savage but noble looking silhouette where he's got his leg on the tactical statue. He's got his sword at his side ready to strike, and he's holding his hand up. It looks like there should be a skull in his hand that he's looking at, reciting Shakespeare to. It's just a fantastic looking sculpt. And then each of the other ones, like the big beefy vampire, looks like just a tower, a big slab of rock. And then you've got the beautiful and deadly female wielding, I believe she's holding like 2 swords, like ready to slice and dice in a big whirlwind of blades. And then you've got the bestial, feral, primal vampire ready to take off or swoop in and attack his prey. So Evil Sunz Scarlet, you could see we're starting to build up those highlights, and they're looking really, really nice. You can see the depth with the Agrax Earthshade. And also, like I always say in these videos, anytime you feel like your highlights are getting too chunky or covering too wide of an area, all you have to do is go back down to the paint you were using one level below this. So in this case, Wazdaka Red. Or if it's too big of an issue for even that, go to your shade color, Agrax Earthshade, and start by thinning down that Agrax Earthshade and just glazing it over the area you think it looks a little bit too garish or incorrectly painted. And just find where those shadows naturally occur and just reline them up with Agrax Earthshade. All right, Wild Rider Red. It's a beautiful combination color of red and yellow. It creates this nice vibrant orange that's still slightly more red than anything. And this is where you're really going to see the difference. And I'm going to be just really drawing upside down T's here, following the line of the armor points and creating that illusion of a light catching the armor and that illusion of depth. It's really the greatest joy of a painter that you can create a work of art where when you put it down, you can look at it from, the tabletop, and you can pick out your highlights. You can pick out your edge highlighting, the different techniques that you used. You could see the gradual shift in color from the dark brown to the dark red, to the brighter red, to the orange red. And finally, we're going to end with almost a pure orange with Fire Dragon Bright. I love building up red armor, guys. It's just such a joy, especially when the armor is so well sculpted like this. Blood Angel's armor, being Space Marine armor, has so many rounded edges, very rounded shapes rather, like the shoulder pads, the leg armor, the knee pads, the boots. Having really sharp and vicious looking vampire armor that this guy's got is just a joy to paint. It's helping me practice my highlighting. It's helping me to use my eye to see where I want to add those highlights. Like looking at it now as I'm watching this video, I can see where I might have gone too far in places, like George Lucas, and where I might have gone a little bit further and popped up the color a little bit more, or deepened the shadows a little bit more. Maybe I could have gone back to where the gold meets that leg armor there, or to where the leg armor meets the knee pad. And maybe I could have hit that with a thicker line of Nuln Oil just to create a really firm line shading, a very obvious line shading there. But you live and you learn, and you can either go back to your model later, or you can call it done. I think after this, I'm going to call it done. I don't want to overthink any of my work, or else I'm never going to be satisfied. I'm always going to find problems with my work. So I'm just going to do the best that I can, get this model painted up, and then, yeah, we'll call it a day. Again, I'm just looking for those edges, those sharp, straight edges where the armor looks like it might be catching a little bit of light. It's funny, you don't notice what's on the back of a model when you're looking at it. Most of the Warhammer community articles or any pictures you find online has all of these models facing the camera, right? So I didn't know that on the back of him he's got pouches, he's got a vial full of blood, his different scabbards and everything on the back, his armor, how it has that gold trim, but then also little jewel drops. It's just a lot to take in. And then of course those two giant fangs, like what are those? I think Big Boy has them on the front of his armor, but it makes more sense for Duval to have them on the back because the front can have that demon skull on his chest plate. And then I think if you look on his groin plate, the gold part of it, it's like a vampire evil bat head, or face rather. It's just fantastic sculpt. there's a look at the back of that model, just putting that highlight color onto the back area. And here we go, Fire Dragon Bright, our last paint. And you'll notice as you're working on your highlights, you're spending less and less time actually putting the paint on the model because you're painting less. Like Fire Dragon Bright is really going to go only on the points and on the very sharpest lines. I'm trying not to create that bright orange highlight. I don't want the audience, the viewer, to look at that. I want the viewer to see just gradual variations and transitions of color in the red family there. But yeah, when you do a very, very precise and just thought out point application of this Fire Dragon Bright, it's just gonna make your model pop so much. And hey, if you'd like to get a Crimson Court, unfortunately, there aren't any that I was able to find on Amazon. Like, it's going to be a real lottery to find them on eBay at a price that you want. But Games Workshop is coming out with a starter set for Warhammer Underworlds for Age of Sigmar, where the good guys are the Stormcast Eternals and their foes are the Crimson Court. So these 4 vampires, and it's Games Workshop's way of scaling down the number of miniatures, not having full war bands of 6 or 7 or 8 models, which they've been recently doing with like the Lizard Men, and I think that there's like a Troll Hunter and the Goblins, the Orcs. So they're scaling back. They want to have a very, very limited number of miniatures on the table for this game, and I think that's a great idea. Have everybody come into the hobby at a different entry point, make them far apart, distinguishable from each other. So you've got Age of Sigmar, which is like the big skirmish-based game, and then in the Warhammer Age of Sigmar universe, you can have Underworlds, where a very limited amount of miniatures are running around trying to get objectives done, maybe not trying to wipe out the enemy so much. But there you have it, folks, the final shot of my red armor vampire. So glad you were able to join me for this video. Like I said, I will be linking an Amazon affiliate link to the new starter set as soon as that becomes available. You could check it out and get yourself the Crimson Court to paint up. Stay tuned. The actual Prince Duval full-length tutorial is going to be coming out soon. So that is going to be something to just play in the background and enjoy while you work. Thanks to my patrons. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button before you go. Ring the bell for notifications. We'll see you in the next video. Latest, player!